This is the Field Instructor Orientation Training Module for new field instructors within the social work program of MacMurray College. First and foremost, I'd like to say welcome. We are so glad that you have chosen to become a field instructor for our social work practicum student. Your work and dedication in educating the future generation of social workers is very important to the continuation of the professional field of social work. This PowerPoint training module provides a basic overview of the MacMurray College Field Practicum Manual and the documentation requirements of the practicum experience for field instructors. Our social work program has a field practicum manual that contains all of the information and documents necessary for the practicum experience. Please find our manual on the webpage link below. The first 13 pages of the field practicum manual provide an overview of the practicum experience. These first 13 pages also include policies and guidelines for the field instructors, policies and guidelines for students within the practicum setting, and policy and guidelines for the Director of Field Education. I'd like to direct your attention now to the Field Practicum Manual, pages 4 through 6. This section outlines criteria for agency instructors, orientation for agency instructors, such as completing this training module, evaluation information for how to grade and evaluate students within the practicum experience, and criteria for providing practicum grades for field instructors. I'd like to direct your attention now to the documentation necessary for field practicum. The preliminary paperwork is to be completed prior to beginning any practicum hours. Students on their own verify that they have read and understood the manual and sign a piece of documentation that can be found on page 14. On page 18, the student also completes and signs a waiver and release of liability. Practicum students are also expected to complete the following document with you as the field instructor prior to beginning practicum hours. This document can be found on pages 15 through 17 and is called the Social Work Practicum Agreement. The Social Work Practicum Agreement, found on page 15, has sections to be filled out by you, the field instructor, the student, and for the Director of Field Education. The first page has various sections to be filled out by the student and the field instructor. This page requires the student's first and last name, the field instructor's first and last name, the agency name, the highest education degree that the field instructor holds, the address of the agency, the years of professional experience that the field instructor holds, and the years of supervisory experience that the field instructor has. If you'll turn the page to page 16, you'll notice a section that's specifically outlined for field instructors. In this section, your first and last name agrees to accept MacMurray students at the agency within the practicum experience, and signed and dated by you as the field instructor. The next page outlines the student's responsibilities with sections for the student to complete, and the Director of Field Education's responsibilities with sections for them to complete. The learning contract is the next piece of documentation that we will discuss. The learning contract can be found on pages 19 through 22. This documentation should be completed during the first 3 weeks of practicum. The learning contract includes competencies and practice behaviors, and specific practice skills of the practicum experience. Next, we'll explore the learning contract. You'll notice in bold type font, competencies 1 through 10. Underneath each competency are 41 practice behaviors that help to fulfill the competency. Below those practice behaviors, you'll notice a purposefully left blank number 1 and number 2. This is the area designated for you and the student to create personalized behaviors that the student can engage in within the agency to fulfill each competency. For example, competency number 1, identify as a professional social worker and conduct oneself accordingly. The last practice behavior noted is engage in career-long learning and use supervision and consultation. For example then, number 1 with the student, you could outline, the student will engage in supervision weekly on Fridays at noon with the field instructor, period. This specific behavior then will fulfill the practice behavior and competency for number 1. This should be completed for number 1 and 2 of each competency 1 through 10. At the end of the learning contract, the field instructor will sign the final page on page 22, as well as the student and the field director. The next piece of documentation that we will review is the log of hours. This can be found on page 23. Practicum students must complete 200 or 400 hours depending on the practicum agreement. The student is in charge of keeping track of the week and the hours of each day that the student completes practicum hours and totaling the hours each week. The field instructor signs the weekly log of hours in the designated section on the log of hours handout. The next piece of documentation is the midterm evaluation. At the midterm of the practicum experience, the field practicum director, the field instructor, and the practicum student will meet to evaluate the progress of the student. This document can be found on page 24 through 29. The progress that will be assessed at this meeting will be based upon the learning contract, the degree to which each student has met the specific behaviors outlined within this contract, input from the field instructor based upon the work of the student, input from the practicum student based upon their experiences within the agency and field practicum setting, and the midterm evaluation document itself. The midterm evaluation document should be completed prior to meeting in order to review during the meeting. The midterm evaluation is based on a Likert scale that follows all 41 practice behaviors within the learning contract. Within each competency is a comment section for additional feedback that the field instructor may fill out to provide additional information about the student's work within each area and competency. There is also an overall evaluation checkbox on page 28. The midterm evaluation also has a section for the field instructor to provide a grade for the student based on midterm evaluation progress. The field instructor also assigns a midterm grade and signs the evaluation on page 29. At the end of the practicum experience, the student, field instructor, and field director again meet to evaluate the overall progress of the student. The final evaluation will be based upon the learning contract goals being met, input from the field instructor, input from the student, and the final evaluation document. The final evaluation document is similar to the midterm document. It should be completed prior to the final meeting. The final evaluation is similar to the midterm evaluation. It is the Likert scale based on all 41 practice behaviors that can be found within the learning agreement. There are comment sections after each competency, an overall evaluation checkbox on page 28 as well. This is an image of the final overall evaluation to be completed. The field instructor also assigns a grade for the final evaluation. And the field instructor signs the bottom of the final evaluation. The last piece of documentation that is part of the field practicum manual and the field practicum experience is the agency instructor evaluation of field experience. The field instructor is asked to complete this evaluation that can be found on page 37 in an effort to provide the Director of Field Education information about the entire practicum experience. Once completed, this evaluation can be directly submitted to the Director of Field Education. This concludes the training module for new field instructors, covering the field manual, documentation, and guidelines and procedures that are expected of our field instructors. I'd like to thank you again for your time and commitment to our MacMurray College students. And I look forward to working with you in the collaboration of educating future social workers. Thank you again.